Atma Bodha Upanishad. Atma Bodha, meaning self knowledge or self awareness, is an exceptionally lucid and readable work of Shankaracharya, consisting of 68 verses or shlokas. It is, in a sense, a simple summary of his entire Vedantic structure of thought, intended, it would seem, as a basic primer for his students and followers. The text follows a clearly elaborated doctrine, starting with knowledge as a key to liberation, the nature of the Atma within us, the assertion of the pervasive and attribute-less nature of Brahman, and the path towards the realization of the complete identity between the Atma and Brahman. The very name of the book, Self Knowledge, suggests its perennial interest and universal value. Self knowledge is vital. All other forms of knowledge are of secondary importance, for a man's action, feeling, reasoning, and thinking are dependent upon his idea of the self. His view of life will be either materialistic or spiritual according to his conception of himself. Therefore, it behooves everyone to cultivate self knowledge at all times. Self knowledge serves the practical purpose of destroying pain and suffering, which are always caused by ignorance of the self, and also the positive end of helping everyone enjoy supreme peace and blessedness here and always. Qualified student. I am composing the Atma Bodha, this treatise of the knowledge of the self, for those who have purified themselves by austerities and are peaceful in heart and calm, who are free from cravings and are desirous of liberation. Just as the fire is the direct cause for cooking, so without knowledge no emancipation can be had. Compared with all other forms of discipline, knowledge of the self is the one direct means for liberation. Action cannot destroy ignorance, for it is not in conflict with or opposed to ignorance. Knowledge does barely destroy ignorance as light destroys deep darkness. The soul appears to be finite because of ignorance. When ignorance is destroyed, the knowledge self, which doesn't admit of any multiplicity, truly reveals itself by itself, like the sun when the clouds pass away. Constant practice of knowledge purifies the self, Jivatma, stained by ignorance, and then disappears itself as the powder of the Kataka nut settles down after it has cleansed the muddy water. The world, which is full of attachments, aversions, etc., is like a dream. It appears to be real as long as it continues, but appears to be unreal when one is awake, when true wisdom dawns. The Jagat appears to be true, Satyam, so long as Brahman, the substratum, the basic of all this creation, is not realized. It is like the illusion of silver in the mother of pearl. Like bubbles in the water, the worlds rise, exist, and dissolve in the Supreme Self, which is the material cause and the prop of everything. All the manifested world of things and beings are projected by imagination upon the substratum, which is the eternal, all-pervading Vishnu, whose nature is existence, intelligence, just as the different ornaments are all made out of the same gold. The all-pervading Akasha appears to be diverse on account of its association with various conditionings, upadhis, which are different from each other. Space becomes one on the destruction of these limiting adjuncts. So also the omnipresent truth appears to be diverse on account of its association with the various upadhis and become one on the destruction of these upadhis. Because of its association with different conditionings, upadhis, such ideas as caste, color, and position are superimposed upon the Atma as flavor, color, etc., are superimposed on water. Determined for each individual by his own past actions and made up of the five elements that have gone through the process of fivefold self division and mutual combination, are born the gross body, the medium through which pleasure and pain are experienced, the tent of experiences. The five pranas, the 10 organs, and the manas and the buddhi formed from the rudimentary elements before their fivefold division and mutual combination with one another. And this is the subtle body, the instruments of experience. Avidya, which is indescribable and beginningless, is the causal body. Know for certain that the Atma is other than these three conditionings bodies. In its identification with the five sheaths, the immaculate Atma appears to have borrowed their qualities upon itself, as in the case of a crystal which appears to gather unto itself color of its vicinity. Through discriminative self analysis and logical thinking, one should separate the pure self within from the sheaths as one separates the rice from the husk, bran, etc., that are covering it. The Atma doesn't shine in everything, although he is all pervading. He is manifest only in the inner equipment, the intellect buddhi, just as the reflection in a clean mirror. One should understand that the Atma is always like the king, distinct from the body, senses, mind, and intellect, all of which constitute the matter, prakriti, and is the witness of their functions. The moon appears to be running when the clouds move in the sky. Likewise, to the non discriminating person, the Atma appears to be active when it is observed through the functions of the sense organs. Depending upon the energy of vitality of consciousness, Atma, Chaitanya, the body, senses, mind, and intellect engage themselves in their respective activities, just as man work depending upon the light of the sun. Fools, because they lack in their powers of discrimination, superimpose on the Atma the absolute existence knowledge, Satchit, all the varied functions of the body and the senses, just as they attribute blue color and the like to the sky. The tremblings that belongs to the water are attributed through ignorance to the reflected moon dancing on it. Likewise, agency of action, of enjoyment, and of other limitations which really belong to the mind are delusively understood as the nature of the self Atma. Attachment, desire, pleasure, pain, etc. are perceived to exist as long as buddhi or mind functions. They are not perceived in deep sleep when the mind ceases to exist. Therefore, they belong to the mind alone and not to the Atma. Just as luminosity is the nature of the sun, coolness of water, and heat of fire, so too the nature of the Atma is eternity, purity, reality, consciousness, and bliss. By the indiscriminate blending of the two, the existence knowledge aspect of the self and the thought wave of the intellect, there arises the notion of I know. Atma never does anything, and the intellect of its own accord has no capacity to experience I know. But the individuality in us delusionally thinks he is himself the seer and the knower. Just as the person who regards a rope as a snake is overcome by fear, so also one considering oneself as the ego, jiva, is overcome by fear. The egocentric individuality in us regains fearlessness by realizing that it is not a jiva but is itself the Supreme Soul. Just as a lamp illumines a jar or a pot, so also the Atma illumines the mind and the senses, organs, etc. These material objects by themselves cannot illumine themselves because they are inert. A lighted lamp doesn't need another lamp to illuminate its light, so too Atma, which is knowledge itself, needs no other knowledge to know it. By a process of negation of the conditionings, upadhis, through the help of the scriptural statement, it is not this, it is not this, the oneness of the individual soul and the Supreme Soul, as indicated by the great Mahavakyas, has to be realized. The body, etc., up to the casual body ignorance, which are objects perceived, are as perishable as bubbles, realized through discrimination that I am the pure Brahman, ever completely separate from all these. I am other than the body, and so I am free from changes such as birth, wrinkling, senility, death, etc. I have nothing to do with the sense objects such as sound and taste, for I am without the sense organs. I am other than the mind, and hence I am free from sorrow, attachment, malice, and fear, for he is without breath and without mind, pure, etc., is the commandment of the great scriptures, the Upanishads. I am without attributes and actions, eternal Nitya, without any desire and thought, Nirvikalpa, without any dirt, Niranjana, without any change, Nivikarma, without form, Nirakara, ever liberated, Nitya Mukta, ever pure, Nirmala. Like the space, I fill all things within and without, changeless and the same in all. At all times, I am pure, unattached, stainless, and motionless. I am verily that Supreme Brahmin alone, which is eternal, pure, and free, one individual and non dual, and of the nature of changeless knowledge, infinite. The impression I am Brahm, thus created by constant practice, destroys ignorance and the agitation caused by it, just as a medicine or rasayana destroys disease. Sitting in a solitary place, freeing the mind from desires and controlling the senses, meditate with unswerving attention of the Atma, which is one without a second. The wise one should intelligently merge the entire world of objects in the Atma alone and constantly think of the self ever as contaminated by anything as the sky. He who has realized the supreme discards of his identification with the objects of names and forms, thereafter he dwells in vision, embodiment of the infinite consciousness and bliss, he becomes the self. There are no distinctions such as knower and the knowledge and the object of knowledge in the Supreme Self. On account of its being of the nature of endless bliss, it doesn't admit of such distinctions within itself. It alone shines by itself. When this, the lower and the higher aspect of the self are well churned together, the fire of knowledge is born from it, which in its mighty conflagration shall burn down all the fuel of ignorance in us. The Lord of the early dawn, Aruna himself, has already looted away the thick darkness. When soon the sun rises, the divine consciousness of the self rises, when the right knowledge has already killed the darkness in the bosom. Atma is an ever present reality, yet because of ignorance it is not realized. On the destruction of ignorance, Atma is realized. It is like the missing ornament of one's neck. Brahman appears to be a jiva because of ignorance, just as a host appears to be a ghost. The egocentric individuality is destroyed when the real nature of the jiva is realized as the self. The ignorance characterized by the notion I and mine is destroyed by the knowledge produced by the realization of the true nature of the self, just as right information removes the wrong notion about the direction. The yogi of perfect realization and enlightenment sees through his eyes of wisdom, jnana chakshush, the entire universe in his own self and regards everything else as his own self and nothing else. Nothing whatever exists other than the Atma, the tangible universe, is merely Atma, as pot and jars are merely made of clay and cannot be said to be anything but clay, so too to the enlightened soul, and that is perceived, is the self. A liberated one endowed with self knowledge gives up the traits of his previously explained occupants, upadhis, and because of his nature of Satchitananda, he merely becomes Brahman, like the one that grows to be a wasp. After crossing the ocean of delusion and killing the monsters of likes and dislikes, the yogi who is united with peace dwells in the glory of his own realized self as an Atmaram. The self abiding Jivan Mukta, relinquishing all his attachments to the illusory external happiness and satisfied with the bliss derived from the Atma, shines inwardly like a lamp placed inside a jar. Though he lives in the conditioning upadhis, he, the contemplative one, remains ever unconcerned with anything, or he may move about like the wind, perfectly unattached. On the destruction of the upadhis, the contemplative one is totally absorbed in Vishnu, the all-pervading spirit, like water into water, space into space, and light into light. Realize that to be Brahman, the attainment of which leaves nothing more to be attained, the blessedness of which leaves no other blessing to be desired, and the knowledge of which leaves nothing more to be known. Realize that to be Brahman, which when seen leaves nothing more to be seen, which having become one is not born again in this world, and which when knowing leaves nothing else to be known. Realize that to be Brahman, which is existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, which is non-dual, infinite, eternal and one, and which fills all the quarters above and below and all that exists between. Realize that to be Brahman, which is non-dual, indivisible, one and blissful, and which is indicated in Vedanta as the immutable substratum realized after the negation of all tangible objects. That is, like Brahma and other taste only a particle of the unlimited bliss of Brahman and enjoy in proportion their share of that particle. All objects are pervaded by Brahman, all actions are possible because of Brahman. Therefore, Brahman permeates everything as butter permeates milk. Realize that to be Brahman, which is neither subtle nor gross, neither short nor long, without birth or change, without form, qualities, color, and name, that by the light of which the luminous orbs like the sun and the moon are illuminated, but which is not illumined by their light, realize that to be Brahman. Pervading the entire universe outwardly and inwardly, the Supreme Brahman shines of itself like the fire that permeates a red-hot iron ball and grows by itself. Brahman is other than this, the universe. There exists nothing that is not Brahman. If any object other than Brahman appears to exist, it is unreal like the mirage. All that is perceived or heard is Brahman and nothing else. Attaining the knowledge of the reality, one sees the universe as the non-dual Brahman, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. Though Atma is pure consciousness and ever present everywhere, yet it is perceived by the eye of wisdom alone, by one whose vision is obscured by ignorance. He doesn't see it as the blind do not see the resplendent sun. The jiva, free from impurities, being heated in the fire of knowledge, kindled by hearing and so on, shines of itself like gold. The Atma, the sun of knowledge that rises in the sky of the heart, destroys the darkness of the ignorance, pervades and sustains all and shines and makes everything to shine. He who, renouncing all activities, who is free of all limitations of time, space and direction, worship his own Atma, which is present everywhere, which is the destroyer of heat and cold, which is bliss, eternal and stainless, becomes all-knowing and all-pervading and attains thereafter immortality. In Srimad Paramhansa Parivrajakaचार्यस्य श्री गोविंद भगव पूज्य पाद शिष्यस्य श्री मच्छकर भगवता कृतो आत्मबोधः संपूर्णः। हरि ओम तत्सत्।